Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Kingdom Business Interviews. Here on this podcast, we're all about unlocking the faith in entrepreneurship. Today we're going to be interviewing Russ Porter. He's actually a business owner here in Rockwall, Texas. We are downtown, and what is this street right here called?
This is the San Jacinto Plaza.
San Jacinto Plaza in downtown Rockwall. Russ here has been in business for how long?
We've been the owners of the School of Music for 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
That's incredible. You're my third interview on this podcast, so I haven't had anybody that's owned a business that long on my podcast yet. So that's an honor to have you here. I've got some questions today. We're going to kind of unpack Russ's journey here through his business journey and in life, and we'll just kind of start with some Q&A, and then maybe we'll kind of just organically run into a conversation that's impactful.
All right, let's do it.
I guess to start, I think the best place to start would be, can you share the story of how you started your music school business? What inspired you to pursue this venture? And what were some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Thanks for asking, though. So what inspired me to own the Rockwall School of Music was the fact that how important music was in my own personal life growing up. I grew up in Arkansas, and don't hold that against me, but I got here in Texas, as they say, as fast as I could. So anyway, I grew up in a small town, Arkansas, and sports was everything to everybody except to me. I wasn't good at sports. That wasn't anything that was really of interest. Of course, the only choices in my town was football, basketball, and track. But music was something I really excelled at and really enjoyed and felt like it was a God-given talent.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so anyway, I started off with piano when I was 8. I can't remember a time when I wasn't a singer, just walking around the house singing at church. And
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so singing's my favorite part of music that we do. So piano was a great foundation for me. And then when I got in middle school, got into the choir at school, on into high school, and then went off to college. Just felt like God was calling me to go off to college to get a music degree. And at that time, they actually had a degree for church music. And so my goal was to serve God through the local church. And so before worship pastors, there were what they called ministers of music or choir directors for churches. So that's what I was trained to do, to work with choirs and children's choirs and senior adult choirs, orchestras, handbells, all kinds of music things. So anyway, just passing on the love of music that I had and finding other people that also just was as passionate about sharing their God-given talent with others in the service of God. So that's something that I did for almost 25 years.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that, and how you immediately took it into the church.
Yeah.
And into God's
will.
will.
That's where it all, my life just centered around that.
That's awesome.
And so then about 25 years ago, there was a time where the church that I was serving was switching from the more, I'll call it traditional music that I was talking about, to needing a part-time person instead of full-time to just do more of the contemporary music. So my position was kind of being phased out. Well, at that time, Heather Cullins was the original founder and owner at that time of the Rockwall School of Music. And so there were some life changes happening in her family, and she was either going to have to close the doors or sell it. And so my wife and I were talking. We were trying to pray about whatever would be the next step for us, because we knew my income was going to be running out, at a certain point from the church.
That's a scary feeling, isn't it?
Well, you tell me. Yeah. The real feelings of, am I going to be standing in the food line, food stamp line? Am I going to be having to go to, one of the wonderful places like, Helping Hands, the food kitchen, and some other place like that? I just didn't know what the future was going to hold.
So there was a point in your life where you were essentially broke.
Yes, there was no more income coming in for my job. Now, my wife was an elementary music teacher in the Mesquite ISD, so she had a good teacher salary coming in, but we had a daughter that was in college, finishing up college. We had a son that was getting ready to go off to college. That was the stage of life that we were in at that point in time. And then losing my income.
I know how that feels.
So it was just a real step of faith, because we really felt like God had opened this door for us to step in and just buy the School of Music from her. So we had to take out a loan, of course. We didn't have the money to do that. It was one of the scariest things we've ever done, but it was a time when I was the closest to God, because it felt like I literally could feel His hand of guidance on my shoulder, helping me through this scenario that I'd never walked before. I'd never been a business owner before.
Man, that's awesome.
But I had a lot of skills by working with volunteers and staff members, and I had a budget to oversee. So there were a lot of business things. I just didn't call it that in my church because they use other terminology for it.
Right.
So I realized early on that I did have skills. The Lord had been developing skills in my life, and I didn't know that I was going to be using it for something outside the church. But it was a path that God led us down, and just really, really grateful. So that was 20 years ago.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so we started with around 125 students when we bought the School of Music, and we're up to 865 right now.
So it was literally God that led you and encouraged you to start that business.
Exactly, yeah, to buy it from Heather.
Yeah.
And the door was open, and a mutual friend of Heather's and mine was telling me about her interest in selling it. And so I just looked at my wife and I was like, what do you think? And she knew that some of the other talents and abilities that God had given us through, call them spiritual gifts or just call them natural abilities, whatever.
Right.
Was administration, visionary thinking, entrepreneurship, things like that. So anyway, it was just a kind of all these things coming together at the right time when we needed something, and God provided like He always does.
Man, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think that was a perfect answer for the first kind of series of questions. My wife and I were arguing about this earlier. She was like looking at my other podcast, and she's like, when you ask your first questions, you ask like 3 questions at one time. She was like, you're going to confuse people. And I'm like, well, they all kind of relate to the same thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like asking more than one question, like that kind of relates to the same question, in one question kind of gives you a better idea of how to answer it. I don't know. That's just how I kind of did. I confuse you with the first question?
No, not at all.
Okay, good. Perfect.
I just hope I didn't give you too much information, because you can always edit it out,
Yeah, no, man. No, that was good. That was great. So number 2 here, number 2 of another 3 questions is, how has faith played a role in your journey as a business owner and educator? Have there been moments where you've had to rely on your faith to overcome obstacles or make difficult decisions? I guess outside of, your decision to buy the Rockwall School of Music. I guess, during your ownership, when you first acquired, initially after acquisition, was there anything that you really had to rely on your faith to kind of overcome during that period of time?
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing I didn't mention that was kind of a precursor to us buying the School of Music. So that was 20 years ago, but then go back 25 years before that, when I first got into working in the local church. Our church and staff were meeting, and we were trying to, as a lot of times we would talk about different ways we could reach the community. And one day when I was walking through our building, our church building, it just dawned on me that our church really only used their whole facility Mondays and Wednesdays. And the rest of the week, it was just sitting there empty. And they had small rooms, and back then there was usually a piano in each of the rooms. And so the Lord just I felt like He just gave me a vision that, hey, we could reach people in the community by providing a music academy in our church on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and maybe Saturday mornings, because the building was already there. It was already provided for. The church was looking for ways to bring in the community. We could do that because a lot of the overhead of the building cost and utilities and all that was already being taken care of. So that was a vision that God gave me. Unfortunately, none of the churches that I shared that with ever caught that same vision. Yeah, and so, but that vision stayed alive in my heart for 25 years before we actually became owners 20 years ago. And that's what we're doing. We have all these rooms. We have 18 teaching rooms. We have pianos and guitars and drums and voice lessons and violin, viola, cello, ukulele, just all kinds of teachers. Actually 50 teachers that teach for us 1 or more days of the week. They teach all these different instruments that goes way past what I could teach personally. There's no way I could teach over 800 students.
Right.
Voice and piano were my 2 areas of focus. My wife was a piano performance major, so music's just been a really important part of our lives. And so that was one way early on, to answer your question, how God laid on my heart and gave me a vision for how music could be used to reach people and to help inspire them in their journey. So
would you say that you only being able to handle a handful of students, and then having to take on, how many students did the Rockwall School of Music have when you guys acquired it?
Well, there was about 125 students when we first took it on. So,
so when So that was probably a pretty good challenge for you from the start.
There was 8 or 10 teachers there, mostly piano. Because if you remember back where Rockwall was 20 years ago, it was a lot smaller, only one high school. So, just it was a different area. But people were moving to the area. They were wanting to have piano lessons for their children. So there's quite a few piano teachers, a guitar teacher, a voice teacher, and maybe kinder music or violin. I can't remember all that we had to offer, but it was a very limited scale to what we have now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, obviously, acquiring a business would be a lot different than, building one from the ground up. So I guess what were the biggest challenges for you with acquiring the business? I mean, or was it just a smooth acquisition?
The buying of the school went really well, went smoothly, and but then once it's kind of like, I know in your life situation, you just brought home a new baby from the hospital. As long as the baby's in the hospital and you have a lot of other people there to help you, you're like, man, I got this. I could rock this.
Right.
But then when you bring this newborn baby home in your house, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in charge of this. What am I going to do now? Well, that's kind of how I felt.
Gotcha.
Because before we bought it, I started working there just to kind of learn the systems that Heather had in place, so that I could make this transition as smooth as we could for the families.
Right.
But then at one point in time, in December of 2004, that's when we became owners. And I remember the first day back in the office, I'm like, oh my gosh,
this is
where
all
do I
on
start?
me.
Yeah, there's nobody else to help or to take blame. If it succeeds, praise be to God. If it fails, it's like, Russ, why didn't you listen to God? But anyway, just the administrative part of my life and my functions, the way I'm wired, just kind of kicked in, and there were just things I knew to do, and a lot of it was just God's guidance and leadership. My wife has a lot of the skill sets that I don't have or that I'm not strong at, and so she's really good with financial things, which I'm not.
That's awesome.
So the things that
I struggle with that too.
We just trust God to put opposites together, and
yeah.
So I'm the visionary and the one who can get things done that just push through, and she's more methodical, and she's just is excellent and detail oriented.
Man, let me ask you, like, going back before that, I mean, how long did it take you guys, and how long have you guys been married?
We're coming up on 47 years.
47 years in marriage. Mm-hmm. Man, that's amazing. Yeah. So my wife, we're 6 years.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. We actually, our anniversary was just a few weeks ago, April 7th. And man, I think we're still trying to kind of figure out our roles, our strong suits in our marriage. And so it's awesome to hear that you guys got that figured out. And kind of, that's kind of leading into my question here, was like, was there a point in time where you guys, like, you were struggling with that as well? Just kind of personal curiosity. Because, I mean, I'm kind of trying to look, into the future. It's like, I wonder when we're going to have that figured out. Was there ever a point in time you guys didn't?
Well, when I figure it out, I'll let you know.
Right on.
So
y'all just got
it's still
better
a learning
at it.
process, and we kind of have our own lanes that we know we're good at.
Okay.
There's certain things I would never try to tell her how to do the business aspect of it, the financial. Because I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not good at that. And if she were in charge of trying to set the vision, look forward, do the forward thinking kind of things, that's not her giftedness either. And so we've each kind of carved out. That doesn't mean there's not some overlapping, because there's ideas being bounced off.
Right.
Usually it's from me to her to kind of get a different, more calm approach, instead of just going head first. But
that's something I struggle with too. I just throw it out there and I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah. So so that was but she had her full-time job. She just retired from being a school teacher a couple of years ago. And so we had that going on, but she was still really good about coming up on some during the weekends and during the summer that she had off to help out. And but there was a lot of just, I had to wear a lot of hats during the day. I'd have to answer the phone. I'd have to enroll students. I would have to hire new teachers. I would have to fill in for substitutes as a substitute whenever a teacher was gone. So I was just kind of burning the candle at both ends, so to speak. And so I kind of got to a point where I'm like, God, something's got to happen. There's just not enough hours in the day for us to do what would fulfill the vision I felt like God had put in my heart.
Right.
And so then we began to, I was led to a business coach that
Gotcha.
had so many strengths and insights that I needed. And so I sought the help from another godly man who also had business coaching experience. And so that kind of opened my eyes to help us get over that plateau to where we could, hire at least a person part-time to help in the office.
Continue to grow.
Yeah, exactly.
So that kind of leads me to another question. Music can be a powerful form of expression and connection. How do you incorporate elements of faith and spirituality into your music school curriculum or teaching philosophy?
Since we're open to the public, if we, way back when I was thinking about a music academy in our church, then it could have been much more just Christian focused, or they're based on that because of the environment. We're open to the public. We know that, and we want to be welcoming to all people who come in for whatever reason they're being inspired to learn music. So our teachers, I do all the interviewing, and I talk to all the teachers. So if somebody's going to teach for us, they have to be okay with being able to teach everything from, the Broadway show tunes, if they're a singer, jazz, blues music, but also for students who want to be in the worship team at their church. And
Right.
they have to be, I don't want any feelings that they might have in their own religious belief system to say, I don't know, I don't do Christian music, because we want that to be a part of it. So we open it up to where everything within reason that people want to do, they have
Right.
an opportunity. Lyrics are super important to me because I want to make sure that what people are singing is age appropriate for the child and for the audience
Absolutely.
that they're going to be singing to during recitals or showcase programs. So it's just an environment, a welcoming environment. We have a lot of musical diversity. It's a safe environment. We have security cameras. We've had the Rockwall Police Department come up and evaluate what we do just to make sure it's a safe environment. We're a business of integrity. We say what we're going to do, and we do it. There's nothing hidden. It's all above the board, and it's a continuing education process for the teachers as well as the students. So those are our 4 core values.
Nice.
And we have them painted on the walls in a style of a mural. Yeah. And
I love that.
So it's there for all to see. So we just want people to feel welcome. And that's what people do say when they come in. They say, wow, this is just, we felt welcome ever since we walked in the door. We felt at ease, because it can be a little bit, maybe not scary, but just a little bit unsettling when you walk in, especially when adults come in and they're
Right.
wanting to pursue a childhood passion. And they're
Yeah.
like, do y'all teach adults? They're almost
Yeah.
they're almost afraid to ask, but that you can tell that's something they want to do. And so it's like, sure. I mean, we've had children from 4-year-olds all the way up to senior adults that were 94 years old come in for music lessons.
Nice. Let me ask you this. As a business owner, what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who may be struggling to find success in their ventures? Is there any way that you can kind of help them stay resilient and maintain their faith amidst the challenges of entrepreneurship?
If God's placed a dream in your heart, a vision for what He intends your life to look like, then don't let anybody take that away from you. If God's just laid on your heart a vision, an idea, a dream that you just can't get away from, don't let anybody take it away from you. You've got to hang on to it. And you need to set your parameters early on. Like that's what we did. We decided early on that our school of music was going to provide music to raise up the next generation of worship pastors, the next generation of youth worship team members, choir singers or worship team singers, just however people wanted to use their music in the church. But then if they also wanted to use it on the stage in Broadway, we certainly want to help with that. But it was something that was important to us, and so we've kept that for all these 20 years, and we plan to continue. We've even, like I said, mounted it on our walls so people can read it. So it's
I love
just there.
those too. Those are good. Those
Yeah.
are good core
so
values.
if you have something on your heart that is based on your faith in God, then just stick with it. Be upfront with people when they come in. We've had a few people that don't like the idea that when we do recitals, we'll use some local churches because they're not of the Christian faith, and that bothers them that they're being asked to go into a Christian environment.
Right.
And we're not doing it in any form or fashion to try to be adversarial.
Right.
But that's just an environment that the Lord's opened up for us, and
Yeah.
we're using. And if it doesn't work for them, we apologize, but we just can't change what God's laid on our heart
Right.
for another human being.
Right. Yeah. God's will, not our own.
That's right.
I love that. Many young entrepreneurs struggle with work-life balance and prioritizing their personal well-being. This is a big one for me too. How do you maintain balance and take care of yourself while running a successful business and serving your students? Because I'm sure you have a pretty lengthy schedule.
So fortunately, we do have enough downtime, and then now that we have 2 full-time ladies Monday through Friday covering the front desk, and then 2 weekend ladies who cover the desk, we don't have to stay there from opening to closing like we did early on.
Right.
And so we're able to then go home and, if we want to go out and have dinner or just kick back and enjoy a quiet evening at home.
That's what I want.
Well, it hasn't always been like that for us. I mean,
yeah.
There was a time where I had to be there opening to close because of
Do you feel like even though you guys were working, basically side by side, in the same building, same office, do you feel like, just the amount of responsibilities that you had kind of took away from your time of intimacy together?
Yeah, early on it did, just because there was so much that we both had to do, whether we wanted to or not. It was just things that had to get done.
Yeah.
So, but now we've hired really, really wonderful people. God's provided us with some great talent at the front desk, and so
that's awesome.
That is just, and we're getting better at delegating because when you feel like it's your baby, you want to make sure everything's done the right way, and so. Now we're learning the importance of training people so it can still be done the right way, even though it doesn't have to be done by myself or my wife.
Right. So letting go, per se, in certain aspects, in certain fields and areas in the business, and kind of just learning to let go. That's probably a good tip for entrepreneurship, I guess. Delegating certain things to kind of free up some of that time if you need it.
Sure. I mean, one thing I learned, and it's pretty common, but if you had never heard it, you had never heard it. But you need to find ways to free up your time. So instead of working in the business, you're working on the business, which just simply means, like early on, I was working in the business. I was doing everything, answering the phone, enrolling students, just taking care of all the scheduling. And I was so consumed with all those details that someone who, came in as a office manager could take care of those administrative things and then free me up to do the things that only I could do, to set the vision, to hire the staff, to do the marketing, things like that. And so that's working on the business.
Speaking of marketing, I saw that promo video you did. That was really good.
Oh, nice.
I really like that.
Good. I appreciate that.
I like how at the end it was like, and you could be the next.
That
was awesome.
Number 860, yeah. That was great.
That was really good. All right, Russ. Well, I got 2 more questions, and then we'll close out. So the first one, before we do the closing questions, I guess you could say, is how do you define success in your music school business, and how has this definition evolved over time? How can young entrepreneurs redefine success in their own ventures to align with their values and faith?
Ooh.
It's a good one.
Now you're getting personal.
It's a good one.
It is. You may have to help me remember all those different points, but
see, that's where my wife said it would confuse people.
There's too many questions.
Let me start with just the first one.
Okay, first one.
How do you define success in your music school business, and how has that definition evolved over time?
Okay, I'll give you 2 answers. The real answer of my heart, I define success by seeing other children, teenagers, adults find as much enjoyment and finding ways to fulfill their musical passion as I've been able to through music.
That's awesome.
So that's the heart answer.
Love that.
Now, my head and my flesh want to say, I want to see more kids. I want to see more numbers. I want to see more enrollment, because with that, it does bring in more revenue, but that revenue we can use to reach more people.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a cycle. It's not about the bottom line, the paycheck.
How much can you do for God?
Exactly, yes. And now that we have family members that are serving as missionaries overseas, we have some of that money can get redirected to help them in an area that, never could have happened before.
Yeah.
So,
and see, that's something I struggle with too. Like when I first got into entrepreneurship and when I first started my first business, My intentions honestly were just for money. I mean, I was just doing it for money. But now, since I've been seeking God, I've had a pretty big turning point in my life where I felt like God really spoke to me for the first time in my life, just about a year ago. And it's just like, money is just a tool. Money is just a median. It's just a vehicle for us to fulfill God's purpose for us, to fulfill His will for us, and to serve Him and to serve people. And the fulfillment that you get out of that is so much more than what just making some money and being able to have just financial freedom. You know, it's I think before, for me, was just financial freedom was all I was seeking, but now it's just like freedom from everything, freedom from sin, freedom from, addiction, freedom from anxiety, freedom from stress, freedom from fear of what other people may be thinking of me, of what this world thinks of me. And man, it's huge. It's huge whenever you change when you change the definition of success to God's will, and you get in alignment with Him. The amount of fulfillment you get from that is huge. Yeah. So next one, tacked onto that one was, how can young entrepreneurs redefine success in their own ventures to align with their values and faith? From you.
From me. Okay. Well, I've always been a firm believer that the Bible talks a lot about spiritual gifts, and once we become a follower of Christ, God instills in us spiritual gifts. They're not. It's different from talents, natural talents, or talents that we develop. But these are spiritual gifts. They just manifest in our lives, and each one of them is manifest differently based on who we are as image bearers of Christ. And so, what that would look like in my life would be different from what would look like in someone else's life. But nonetheless, It all comes from the Spirit of God. And so, if you're true to who you are, if you're listening to the voice of God, you're following the leadership of God, all of those things will come together so that your business can be God-honoring.
Man, I love that. So in closing, what are some words of encouragement or wisdom that you could offer to entrepreneurs? They don't have to be young, just entrepreneurs of all ages who may be feeling discouraged or uncertain about their future. How can they stay anchored in their faith and trust in God's plan for their lives and businesses?
Wow, it's heavy duty, but it's so important. The first thing that came to my mind is feeling isolated.
Yeah.
We get so involved in doing, and there's an excitement to growing a business, starting a business, all of those energies that get going, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I've got to keep spinning and juggling all of these things at the same time, and then then the fatigue starts wearing in. And the isolation wears in. And when we get worn down, when we feel isolated, we don't feel like we have other people in our corner encouraging us, and we're always just giving and not replenishing.
Right.
That's a dangerous situation. Dangerous. I've been
scary.
there. I'm sure lots of people else have.
Absolutely.
So, that was one of the things that my coach, that was a huge step of faith. I didn't feel like we could afford a coach, a business coach. And but then at the same time, my heart just kept saying, you can't afford not to have one. You've got to have somebody that can help you get to where you want to be, because he's got some insights, some understanding about how to run a business that I didn't have.
Absolutely.
And so I need to learn from him.
That's another reason why I'm sitting here with you.
Well, thank you. So anyway, I just feel like isolation is just for those of us in our Christian life. If we feel isolated, then that gives Satan a door, a way to get into our lives and begin to say, oh, you don't really need to do that. You don't really need to spend time with the Word or things like that.
That's where that deception comes in. Yeah.
So just being really careful about that and making sure that you're surrounded with other people who can encourage you and can kind of help build you up.
Yeah. I think that's been a big thing for me with this podcast too. Is when I first started doing the Dive into Scripture with Me series, where it's just me kind of just digging into the Word of God and sharing that. When I started doing that, I was like, I didn't know it was going to turn into like an everyday thing. I was thinking maybe, every once in a while, but I got a lot of encouragement from the community and the group that I've been in at the church and everything. I don't know if you know Mark Moore, the owner of Onfuego at the Harbor.
Oh, okay.
So he's one of the leaders in my life group, and he's been a super big encouragement for me for that. And he was just, he told me how proud of me that he was for jumping out and doing that, and using it for God's will essentially, and just for being vulnerable in my videos too, and just talking about, say, hey, look, I've struggled with this stuff. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of people. Is like, there's not a lot of people out there that are willing to share their experiences just because of the fear of what other people might think of them. And I think that, when you come out and you are vulnerable like that, not only will it help you, it'll help other people, and that's what God wants.
Well said. Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to do.
Sure.
But man, I'm running out of time. My wife's at the house with the newborn and the kids right now.
Yeah, awesome.
And I was like, babe, it's just going to be a little bit, I promise. It's just going to be a little bit, I promise. But I wish I could sit here and talk to you all night, man.
Oh, that'd be great. But now you can go home and you say it's Russ's fault. He's the one that I couldn't get him to shut up. He just kept talking.
Yeah, I tell it's all your fault.
It's all my fault. I'll take the blame.
You know how it is in marriage, man. When I walk in the door, I just got to be like, it was all me. You got to say, nope, it was my fault. But no, man, it was really, really nice to meet you in person.
Sure.
And I really, really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. And I truly believe that people hearing that, it's going to help them along their way. And that's my whole goal in this is not only just to kind of unlock the faith in entrepreneurship, but to also just kind of help people out in their day-to-day lives, not only in just entrepreneurship, but I feel like just having that worldly desire from people, to be a business owner, to be an entrepreneur, and to be a to get financially free. I feel like that's a good way to bring people into Christ and kind of start understanding that is what God wants for us. God wants us to be free, whether it be spiritually, physically, emotionally, or mentally. God wants us to be free in all aspects, and I think that financial freedom is included in that.
Exactly, yeah. And I would just say, if there's a way of tagging our website or our phone number, because whoever's watching this, if there's been something that's been stirred in your heart from the conversation that we've had, that they'd like to know more, ask some more questions, or just know that there's somebody like me and others in our community that's here in their corner to encourage them, and so they're not feeling isolated. I'm here to help any way I can.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just send me that, and I'll put that link in the description below. If anybody out there hasn't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys so much for everybody that's already subscribed, all the people that are liking and commenting and sharing across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate y'all. And with all that being said, I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day, and we'll see you back on the next episode.